Complete story of Brian Banner Earth 616. As a child, Brian and his sisters Susan and Elaine, along with their mother, were physically and emotionally abused by his father, Bruce Banner I. Regarding his father as a monster and believing that he had inherited a monster gene from him, Brian promised himself that he would never have any children, for fear of bringing another Banner into the world. He severed contact with his sisters, not wanting to relieve bad memories from their childhood, and wanted to escape his by running from it. In college, Brian met Rebecca, whom he fell in love with and later married. Gaining a PhD in physics, Brian found a job in Los Alamos working for the government as a member of a project trying to develop a clean way to create nuclear energy. The stress of his job eventually led Brian to become an alcoholic, and he began to develop anger problems, lashing out at others even when they try to help him. While drunk on the job one day, Brian accidentally overloaded some machinery, causing an explosion that caused him to lose his job. Despite doctors stating that the explosion caused him no harm, Brian became convinced that the explosion in Los Alamos had affected him on the genetic level. Despite his vow to never have children, Brian impregnated Rebecca, who gave birth to their firstborn son, who is ironically named after his father Bruce Banner. Instantly hateful of the baby Bruce, who he believed to be a monster created from both the radiation he was exposed to and the monster gene, Brian ignored him completely and attempted to keep Rebecca away from him, leaving Bruce in the care of the neglectful nurse Meacham. When Bruce woke up early one Christmas morning and opened a present from his mother, a complex model, he assembled it easily despite his young age. Brian's discovery of this convinced him that his belief that Bruce was abnormal and different was correct, and resulted in him beating Bruce and Rebecca when she came to their son's aid. Forced to endure heavy abuse from Brian for several years, Rebecca attempted to escape from him with Bruce. Finding Rebecca as she and Bruce were packing their belongings into their car, Brian attacked Rebecca, killing her by slamming her head against the pavement in front of Bruce, who stood there and watched as his mother was killed by his father. Under the threat of severe punishment, Brian stopped Bruce from testifying against him at his trial for Rebecca's murder, saying in doing so, he would go to hell. Intimidated by Brian's anger, Bruce lied to the courts, stating that his father never abused him or Rebecca, who he said tried to run away for no reason. Brian escaped conviction due to lack of evidence, but was later arrested when, after becoming drunk, boasted about how he beat the law by bullying his son to what he says. Taken away, kicking and screaming, Brian yelled at Bruce that he would have revenge for this. Brian was sent to be imprisoned and put in a mental institution. After 15 years of confinement, the doctors believed that Brian was ready to rejoin society. Bruce talked to the doctors, but they felt he was cured now. Bruce reluctantly let his father stay with him for a short amount of time and noticed he was acting strange. Bruce admitted freely that he thought his father was still disturbed. Brian broke down and blurted out the fact that his father, Bruce's grandfather, had abused him too, but it was obvious Brian Banner was up to something. Brian was acting stranger and Bruce said he should maybe check himself back in for more therapy. Brian broke down and shouted that maybe he had gotten better in the mental hospital because he was away from Bruce. Bruce called him mad and walked away. Bruce went to his mother's grave because it was the anniversary of her death. Brian followed him there and started harassing him again about how Bruce was an evil monster and how he was just trying to save mankind from a mutant and monster like Bruce. He told Bruce he will tell the world what kind of person he was. They argued further, which led to a physical confrontation. Bruce was on the ground and Brian was about to jump on him when Bruce pushed him back with his foot. Brian stumbled back and cracked his neck on Rebecca's gravestone. Bruce blocked the memories of Brian's stay with him and his subsequent death, making himself believe that, as the two of them fought at Rebecca's grave, Brian had simply beat him and left, later being killed by muggers. Brian's ghost continued to haunt Bruce's alter ego, the Hulk, after his death, often appearing to taunt him, stating that he was no better than him. Villains such as Ment-Alo, the Red Skull, the Devil Hulk and the Guild Hulk also used the image of Brian Banner against the Hulk, in an attempt to weaken him. When Bruce Banner and the Hulk were fused back together after being separated on Counter-Earth, Bruce found himself in Hell, where he met Brian. At first terrorized by Brian, the leader, and the Maestro, Bruce eventually stood up to his father, brutally beating and strangling him before being returned to Earth by the spirit of his deceased wife, Betty Ross. Having faced his father, Bruce's haunting by him ceased. When the Hulk began to suffer from Lou Gehrig's disease, Mr. Fantastic, in order to cure him, had Brian Banner's grave dug up and his corpse exhumed, so as to collect some of his DNA. With this, Mr. Fantastic managed to successfully cure the Hulk. After this incident, Bruce Banner visited his father's grave and lamented to himself that now he didn't know how to feel about him. The half-demon hero Trauma, who had the power to change into an opponent's worst fear, adopted the guise of Brian Banner to use against the Hulk. Unfazed by Trauma's transformation into Brian and other enemies of his, the Hulk beat him while stating he was afraid of nothing. During the Chaos War, when the Chaos King resurrected Brian, he transforms into a fusion of the Devil Hulk and the Guild Hulk and fought with Bruce. He tried to kill his wife Rebecca Banner again, but Bruce prevented him from killing her. Brian fed off his son's fear, growing in strength and allowing him to overpower Bruce. After Jarella told Bruce to face his fears, Brian was deprived of his son's fear to feed off, causing him to revert to human form and crumble away to dust. Before dying, Brian told Bruce that he was a monster. Demonstrating the ability to possess gamma mutates, Brian took possession of Jailbait, causing her powers to go out of control and making her boyfriend Hotshot believe she was possessed by the devil. Afterwards, Brian started taking hold of Walter Lankowski, who had started spending prolonged periods of time in his monster form of Sasquatch, making him susceptible to Brian's influence. When Walter was stabbed during a bar scuffle, and treated in a hospital when the night fell, Brian took possession of his body. Bruce had tracked down Walter's whereabouts and confronted him as the Hulk. Brian revealed his true nature, initially causing the Hulk to stagger until he rationalized that his fear for Brian actually belonged to the Bruce Banner persona. The Hulk stopped Brian's possession by absorbing all of Sasquatch's gamma radiation, thus severing the anchor used by Brian to possess him. However, Brian seemingly simply transferred to the Hulk's body. It was later revealed that Brian Banner's ghost was actually a form of a being called the One Below All. Powers. Psychological metaphysical conversion. Brian is as powerful as Bruce perceives him to be. Since Bruce as a child saw his father as an all-powerful evil monster, that is what he became. While feared by his son, Brian was easily able to overpower the Hulk family and shoot green fire blasts. Gamma mutate possession. Using a conceptual green door pertaining to gamma mutates, Brian demonstrated the ability to possess their bodies. He managed to take control of both Jailbait and Sasquatch. Abilities. Scientific genius. Weaknesses. Love. Jarella was able to overcome Brian in his Devil/Guild Hulk form due to Bruce's love for her exceeding the fear of his father. Courage. As he was only as powerful as his son's fear of him, he was quickly defeated when Hulk realized that he did not fear his father anymore and literally blew him away.